I'm joined now by Dr. Jacinta McLaughlin, a dental public health specialist from Trinity College Dublin, and by John Gormley from the Green Party. Dr. McLaughlin, tell us, there are reasonable and thoughtful scientists now saying that fluoridation really shouldn't happen.
There's no reason to say that we don't need water fluoridation. Countries adopt different strategies in terms of improving the oral health of the community. Our children have benefited hugely from having fluoride in the water supplies. They don't suffer like they used to in terms of toothache, dental abscesses. If you talk to the older generations in this country, they'll tell you what it was like to have a terrible toothache and suffer because of dental decay.
But that was 40 years ago. Surely comparing children nowadays to children 40 years ago is a nonsense. They didn't have fluoride toothpastes all over the shelves. They didn't have proper dental care. That doesn't make sense, that comparison, does it?
It does still make sense because, in fact, in our non-fluoridated areas, there's still a difference. The children in non-fluoridated areas have more decay than children in fluoridated areas. Compare with Northern Ireland, again, there's a lot more decay in children in Northern Ireland where they don't have water fluoridation. Another aspect of that is that children in this country have very poor eating habits and brushing habits compared to countries that haven't needed water fluoridation. If you compare with Scandinavia, half of Irish children brush their teeth twice a day. In Scandinavia, it's almost 9 out of 10.
John Gormley, what would you say to that? We're not like the Scandinavians. We don't have that sort of view of public health, so we need fluoridation.
Well, let's look at the facts here, because the dentist who was in your piece there said we had reduced it by 50%. The York Review, which is the most comprehensive study on fluoridation, gives about a 14.6% difference between fluoridated and non-fluoridated areas. You also have to look at the downside, which is dental fluorosis, which actually wasn't mentioned in the clip there, which is actually fluoride damage to the teeth. And we have an epidemic in this country. About 40% of 15-year-olds now suffer from dental fluorosis. Now, the interesting thing is that the science on this topic is changing all of the time. 40 years ago, and you're right to point out, it was 40 years ago, it was thought that we had to ingest fluoride. We don't have to ingest fluoride. It works topically. It works on the surface of the tooth. And we also know that from very recent studies, in fact, that you should not give fluoridated tap water to children. The ADA gave that advice. And also, I have to say, and I compliment Jacinta on this, Jacinta herself wrote in an article, herself and her colleague, Professor Clarkson, said very clearly back in the year 2000 that fluoridated tap water should not be given to babies.
Just let me address that with you. This seems most strange. There is exactly that quote, and your name is at the top of this paper, International Dental Journal. However, infant formula should still be prepared using non-fluoridated water.
That was a review of the evidence that that article was published in the year 2000, before the Forum on Fluoridation reported here. And part of the report of the Forum on Fluoridation,
your mind a lot, have you?
On the basis of the evidence of the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, because they were commissioned to do a report on this very topic. But I'd like to explain to you and to everybody at home about dental fluorosis. In this country, dental fluorosis is seen as very faint white flecks or faint white lines. I looked at the photographs in your clip there, and many of those were not dental fluorosis. They looked very alarming, and I'm sure people at home were very concerned. But in fact, the fluorosis we see in this country, because the levels of fluoride are very low in the water supply, the kind of fluorosis we see is very faint, and it's not obvious.
Why is there a question mark over the use of this substance in children if it's perfectly healthy for adults?
There isn't a question mark. As I said, the Food Safety Authority of Ireland did a study which the conclusion of which is that it is perfectly safe to use fluoridated water to make up babies' bottles, babies' feeds.
That isn't actually true, because the Forum report stated very clearly that if babies are breastfed, they won't get fluorosis. That's what it stated. Now, the Food Safety Authority Scientific Committee, they met, unanimously agreed that fluoridated water should not be given to babies, and subsequently changed their minds.
They said
in very irregular and suspect circumstances.
Well, they said they just reviewed the scientific evidence. There have been some errors made, but that's what they said.
It's very you have to admit, look,
let's get back to something clear.
If an Oireachtas committee conducted itself in that fashion, there would be outrage here in this programme, the editorials of the Irish Times, and these are the people who are charged with protecting our health.
We should, surely, John, we should point out, like Jacinta says, you're talking about white marks in people's teeth. It's not the biggest disaster in the world.
Well, I think this is an important point, because we had an international expert come before our committee, Dr. Hardy Lineback. He's an internationally renowned dentist, and he said very clearly that fluoridation is a manifestation of toxicity. That fluorosis itself shows that we have too much fluoride in our bodies. Now that's very significant, because a lot of the science now coming from the United States is showing that when you have too much fluoride in your system, we can get, and you saw the Harvard study showing that bone cancer in children, particularly boys, 5 times higher in fluoridated areas. That concerns me. I don't want to be alarmist about this, but I think we should actually be sensible about this. At this stage, 98% of Europe does not fluoridate. Why can't we be sensible? Why can we not invoke the precautionary principle? Because there is a lot of contradictory evidence. But if there is contradictory evidence, then let's be sensible about it and let's take it out of the water. If in doubt, take it out.
Jacinta McLaughlin, why shouldn't we decide whether we take in fluoride or not? That's the grown-up thing to do. This is not, 1940s. People are individuals. They have a right to make a choice.
People benefit hugely. All sections of the community benefit from this measure of having fluoridation in our water supply. And it's incorrect to say that other European countries don't use fluoride.
A minority.
They use fluoridated salt. They use other vehicles to provide fluoride.
But they have a choice, Jacinta.
But that may be so, but the most effective way, and I read a report arrived to me this morning from the World Health Organization, their executive body met just in January, and top of their list is water fluoridation. They're urging countries that don't have it to take it on.
John Gormley, Jacinta McLaughlin, we'll have to leave it there.
Thank you very much.